Um, my name is Nalini. I'm going to be on here just for the first couple of minutes to do some housekeeping, and I will also be helping run the polls and then come back for question and answers at the end. But then I will get off this screen and leave it to these gentlemen here to present. Today, we're talking about AI and human, positioning your law firm for maximized growth, talking about how you find that balance between AI and human resources, right? It's always that idea that we talk about trust but verify. So we'll have Will McCreight from BluShark, who will start speaking first, and he will go through kind of how do you even decide and figure out how you can have these new AI platforms like ChatGPT and Gemini AI learn your brand, show you to the world, right? Be able to optimize for those platforms. And then we'll transition to Viraj, who will talk a little bit more on the law firm side, operations, and from intake to litigation. How do you take these leads, these cases that you've spent good money on, and make sure that you are putting your best foot forward with streamlining your operations with the best of both worlds, right? AI and human components. So before we begin, there is not a question and answer button where you guys can submit questions or a chat, but there is a raise hand button. If you click the raise hand button, we'll be able to allow you to speak if you have a question. There will be 10-ish minutes at the end where we can do questions and answers. But I know Will's pretty good with this. Raj is pretty good with this. If you guys have a question, want to interrupt, feel free to raise your hand and we can always let you speak and keep this interactive. We're a small group today. Without more here, I think the only other thing is that we will make sure this is recorded and we will send to everybody, and we will also give everybody the opportunity to scan to have the presentation sent to them. I will kick it off to Will.
Yeah, appreciate it, Nalini. And it's something that I'm very excited to chat about. I know that Viraj has a ton of great information as well. Perhaps the best place for us to start here is just to kind of introduce ourselves. So I'll start. Obviously, my name is Will. They've got my government name listed here, William, but you guys can call me Will. I've been with BluShark for about 7 years now. At BluShark, we're a digital marketing agency, really specializing in search engine optimization, as well as just helping to bolster your digital presence, help people find you. I've been with the agency for about 7 years. My background's a little bit more unique in the sense that I don't come from a background of like a sales or business development role. I actually spent my first 5 years with the agency working in a couple of our teams internally, both on the link building side of things, and then as one of our senior level strategists, where I was that primary point of contact for a lot of the firms that we worked with. And because of some of the things that I was able to help do in that position, I stepped into my current role, which is our senior account executive, really helping to create those strategies off the jump and understand if we are the right fit to partner with a specific firm. How do we make sure that we have the right strategy? Because no two strategies are the same, and that's something that we'll talk about. Viraj, do you want to introduce yourself before we dive into the first part of the presentation?
Would love to. Usually, my introduction consists a lot of how to pronounce my name, but Will, you got there and nailed it. So, for folks, my name is Viraj. Runs a garage because of the V. Uh, Finch has not been around as long as Blue Shark. We actually only announced publicly and launched really about April of last year, so been around almost a year. Uh, but white glove pre-litigation for firms that's a combination of AI and human. So happy to talk more about that in a bit. But appreciate the intro.
Yeah, and throughout the presentation, we're going to throw a couple Q&A sections up. We'll also have some polls throughout, and the more information that you guys can give us on those polls will kind of help us speak towards some of the things that might be most applicable. So also, as Nalini mentioned, there's going to be a QR code to download the presentation at the end, as well as a recording of the presentation if it's helpful to go back and revisit anything. I think we're going to start out with a quick poll here right off the jump. First question before we kind of dive into things, really curious to hear, if any of the folks in this room are actively optimizing for any of the different AI search platforms, specifically, Gemini AI or ChatGPT. And then if so, or I guess other question here, do you actively use AI as a method to search throughout, your day-to-day life, or have you looked into this in your visibility for your firm? And then I guess the poll is probably coming up. If there's no poll, if anybody wants to chime in
I
and
am, yeah, I'm doing that right now. Thank you, Will, there.
cool. Cool.
This is questions, and you may have said this already, but a couple of questions, just kind of asking folks about how they leverage AI search platforms. Are you guys also as panelists seeing it, Will and Viraj?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
We
In
are.
the field.
It's very aggressive at telling me that hosts and panelists cannot vote, but we are seeing it.
You can't taint it. So we're letting the folks vote here. We'll give it a second. And then
Yeah.
I will end the poll when it looks
Well,
like
and one extra point for number two, right? I would be curious to know how many people actively use AI as a source of search, or how many people use AI as more of a source of information, right? Or maybe like an element other than search, right? Are you going on ChatGPT to look for the best pizza shops in your area, or are you using it for something else? Because that's also an element that we'll discuss here throughout.
Okay, I'm going to share the results and then I'm going to end the poll. But basically, 67% of all the folks on here said yes, they're actively optimizing for Gemini AI and ChatGPT. There's about 33%, so less than the majority here, that are not. And then 100% of the folks who answered the question use AI search platforms daily. Unfortunately, can't get that second piece. I can maybe said something after. But I would imagine what I've seen too, Will, just in general, is that people are using it a lot for research as well as to find like a service. So it's kind of a split. All right, I'm going to end that poll and you can head on with that information.
Awesome. And kind of building on that, right? There are numerous different AI search engines out there, and we're expecting that trend to continue. A couple of the biggest ones that you all are most likely familiar with, right? You have ChatGPT and you have Google Gemini, but you also have other AI search engines such as Perplexity, Claude, Copilot, Meta AI, even Grok. And there are a bunch of different ways that you can utilize AI in your day-to-day experience. Two of the platforms that we're going to focus most heavily on throughout this presentation are ChatGPT and Gemini. Now, if anybody's wondering why those are the two that we are heavily going to be focused on here today, first of which we know that they are the two most frequently used AI search engines out there, but more importantly, they're also the two that have allowed our team to do the most rigorous testing on. That is absolutely something that I think is important to note. It is one thing to be able to do manual tests, right? Or, cross-reference case studies, but it's a whole other thing to be able to track them strategically, to track progress, and to, be able to say with confidence that you're able to understand the effectiveness of them. And when we look at ChatGPT, I think that is the one that stands out to me that people, are maybe actively using. Google Gemini is another that we'll talk about, of course, but Google Gemini you'll see is more incorporated into the search experience with Google. ChatGPT is one that a lot of people are starting to move to as almost like another source of information. Now, we've learned a lot about ChatGPT, and really a lot of credit goes to Nalini here, who has spearheaded some very big case studies that our team has run internally. But when you look at ChatGPT, right, something that I always like to lead off with is there's this very significant portion of overlap with your traditional SEO that overlaps into your AI search optimization. That being said, ChatGPT does have some specific things that it is looking for in how they feel confident to recommend solutions. So quite a bit of overlap. And what we've also found is that it's showing very similar results oftentimes to Google's top results, both on the local side of things as well as the organic side of things. Anybody who isn't actively optimizing for AI search, if you are actively optimizing your website in general for search engine optimization, you're doing something there. But what we want to focus on is making sure that you're doing, the other, non-overlapping portion of things to achieve that visibility, right? So optimizing for Google's algorithm is going to provide some benefits. And the first step there is to continue to focus on some of these fundamentals, which is going to carry quite a bit of weight. The fundamentals for ChatGPT, while similar, are not the same. So these are 5 of the things that we have found to be most effective when it comes to ranking in ChatGPT. To list them out real quick, you have the results, right? More specifically, your verdicts and settlements. This is where I always encourage everybody to brag about the great results that you do, the great results that you've achieved in court for your clients, right? Even things courtroom, such as the things that you're actively doing in your community, but also to have a strong schema and markup on the site that really allows the bot to crawl your site and understand this information. Second piece being the awards and recognitions, which is almost building on top of this, making sure that if we are, part of Super Lawyers, if we have achieved a recognition for, best law firm, that we have these listed on our sites as well as the schema and markup to allow the bots to crawl that. Other things such as testimonials. Now, this is one of the biggest pieces that I like to highlight because what we found is that, while in the past, right, reviews on Google have maybe been the, entire recommendation here, what we found is that there's now also significant value in having some reviews on your social platforms such as Facebook, on Yelp, but also highlighting these on your website as well, just another source of confidence. Lawyer profiles and citations, basic things such as Avo, for example, and making sure that we have our listings strong across these platforms. But then also local press and authority. And this almost builds into the idea of bragging about the firm, right? If there are, best of nominations in your community, right? Best law firm in XYZ state, city, community, making sure that we're nominating and attempting to achieve that recognition. Other listings, press releases for great things that you all are doing, and even Wikipedia at times. Those are all strong ways for us to really brag about ourselves. And in summary, right, when we're looking at all of these things, it is no longer just bragging on your own site. It's bragging anywhere that we can throughout the web. So a lot of these, like I said, fundamentals, but things that we know ChatGPT is looking for specifically. One piece of homework for you all could be to go and identify, for example, one best of listing or nomination in your community, right? Identify at least one opportunity for you to go in, nominate yourselves as the best law firm, and then encourage your audience to vote through maybe a newsletter that you're doing, or trying to achieve that recognition. Moving on to some more fun stuff, a couple case studies that we have run on, really showcasing what exactly allows you to rank through ChatGPT. One of which being, using our advantages or using, our advantages as a firm to leverage our visibility on ChatGPT. So you can see real quick here an example of a case study running a search for Coachella Valley injury lawyer, right? Just a very simple query into ChatGPT. And you can see here that, first of which it provides, a couple different examples here. But also making sure that we are providing the information to justify the conversion upon that visibility. And this comes back to the idea of bragging about the verdicts and settlements that we have, showing those AI search engines that we are out there getting real results for the clients with the schema to allow that search engine to crawl it and achieve that information. So you can see here the first example, Walter Clark Legal Group, and you can see that schema markup allowing the search engine to crawl and understand that we're a long-established firm with a strong track record of multi-million-dollar recoveries for our clients in serious injury and wrongful death cases, right? The proper use of this schema markup on these pages of content with case result values can help not just allow us to be visible, but also allow us to convert upon that visibility. One of the most important things to note across any element of search is that visibility does not equal conversion, right? Just because we're visible does not mean that we are going to convert as effectively as we can. And it's another example of ways that we can get, 5% better. And that 5% better cumulatively can make up and account for a huge difference here. So you can see that this is something that, stands out across the different results that we're seeing on this example. Another example here being the testimonials on your Google business profile. Now, I'm sure that most of you are sick and tired of hearing everybody tell you to get more reviews, right? More reviews, more reviews, more reviews. But I will say that reviews are still one of the most, if not the most important thing that you can control on your end that is going to allow you to get as much value as you possibly can. So this is another example of a search on ChatGPT for the best personal injury law firm in Plainfield, New Jersey. And you can see that this is only showing one option, right? More of like a one pack. And it also is going to show why why the firm stands out. So if you look at the right-hand side of this screen towards the bottom, you can see that orange box, why this firm stands out. And you can see that it not only includes the location, but it also includes the review ratings, the total count of reviews, as well as some different things like what we specialize in, right? Information that's being pulled from the Google Business Profile. Now, one of the things that makes AI search somewhat difficult to track is that you can see that there's no call to action available here, right? While it lists the firm, it does not include a way to, reach out and call directly. Something that we have found that makes that tracking piece a little bit difficult is that the user experience here, what you would anticipate is that, coming across doing your research on the AI search engine on ChatGPT, right, provides you with the answer. In which case, what we found is that people are likely to then take that firm, run a search on Google, and then reach out and call. And this makes things a little bit difficult because when you're trying to track attribution here, right, running a search for the firm name might, be more akin to direct traffic, or might be more akin to somebody going and looking out for the firm directly. But this result would be an example of somebody that's actually become aware of you through ChatGPT, so that it translates and goes through to Google, kind of muddying the waters a little bit. Beyond just reviews, something that we've also found to be very important here, building into that is the contents in your reviews. So this is, an opportunity for you all to not just get a 5-star review, but maybe highlight three different things, right? Something that I like to encourage people is, in what area did, you help the client? And what was one example of your experience that you found to be very satisfactory with them, right? Was it responsiveness? Was it communication, et cetera? And then what type of case did they help you with? And those are three easy bullet points that you can kind of leverage if you are able to help somebody with the contents of that review that can make a big difference. Another example here is just the impact of those testimonials and of those reviews towards your Google Business Profile, allowing you to rank and show in ChatGPT. So your review rating absolutely matters here. One thing that I always find important to clarify with the firms that we speak with is that you are not only playing a game of total volume of reviews, right? The rating really, really matters. It's not as much about having the most reviews in your market, but the consistency of getting strong reviews and new reviews. It doesn't have to be 50 reviews each month. I'd encourage everybody to understand exactly what they are capable of on any given month. And even if that number is 2 to 3, making sure that you are being consistent with your reviews. We saw close to 10 out of 10 of our case to 10 out of the 10 case studies that we ran here with ChatGPT for consistently getting new reviews each week and having an impact in that visibility, right? These search engines in general, they're looking for the fact that we are active, but that consumers are consistently and constantly engaging with our platform and reviewing our business. And you can see that this example here for the best personal injury lawyer in Aurora is specifically showcasing that they are one of the most reviewed, but also have excellent client feedback, right? And that speaks towards the contents of these reviews themselves. Last thing here on ChatGPT is an example of the value of some of these lawyer profiles. And you can see that ChatGPT is actually specifically referencing some of the information that these firms are providing on Avo. You can see that all three of these firms are pulling information from Avo for a search of best injury lawyer in Holland, Ohio, right? And so making sure that we aren't just looking at everything that needs to be done on our website, but that we're also looking at the advantages that we can create for ourselves off of our website, right? Making sure that all of these lawyer profiles are built out, that we have the correct information, right? That we have good client feedback on them, if that's something that we're able to add. We tested optimizing a number of profile fields at various different levels on these lawyer profiles to see what worked best. For example, descriptions, FAQs, reviews, and the general consensus is that to keep the profile active and engage with all the different fields that they offer you the ability to interact with is the best practice here. Whether it's something that is impacting the search engine results now or not, right? We want to make sure that we're taking advantage of every opportunity that we have here, even if it's down the line. So for all of your lawyers, making sure that the profile is attached to their bio page on your website is also an important thing, just to get as much value out of these as you possibly can. Next piece that we're going to talk about is Gemini. Now, Gemini is a particularly interesting one because what we're finding is that it's becoming more and more evolved in the search engine results page itself, on top of people that are specifically going and looking to use Gemini AI specifically. So not a surprise to anybody. Gemini AI search platform, very similar to Google's search algorithm because it's owned by Google. But it's very important to note here that the AI overviews are heavily influenced by the organic content algorithm, right? Heavy emphasis here on how you structure and write your content on your site. But some of the major differences that we found are that AI overviews are summaries from web pages that answer questions, which are oftentimes going to be found at the top of the Gemini page. An AI mode, if you're using this as a user, has to be toggled on, which is going to create more of a chatbot experience. So you can ask it questions, keep asking it questions. Sometimes Google even pushes you to this, especially on the mobile side of things, I've noticed. But we're also seeing strong correlation of AI mode results being pulled directly from the three pack. So if you want to rank in the three pack, right, you have a solid chance of being discussed in AI mode as well. As far as an example of some of these results themselves, Gemini AI is not limited to overviews, right? It will sometimes show you a three pack, very similar to that traditional three pack that you've seen on the search engine results page. We firmly believe that that three pack is not going away, right? It may just be a different way that people interact with that three pack. You can see an example here. It's going to be it's going to continue to be featured as the search page continues to evolve. As far as the fundamentals are concerned, the three biggest distinguishers based on a year of case studies that we ran internally with some of our clients are that the main items we want to focus on are the following: on-page content optimizations and schema markup on your site, very similar to what we discussed for the ChatGPT. Same thing, results, verdict settlements, post about these as much as we can, and then testimonials, right? So reviews very heavily on your Google business profile, but also making sure that we're taking into account things like your website, Yelp, different socials such as, like I mentioned earlier, Facebook being a big one, etc. With content specifically, looking at Gemini's AI overview, what we've found is that the on-page optimization is the biggest piece here. You want to focus on optimizing our content pages for these AI overviews, right? We're not going to go into all of these in as much detail from a timing standpoint, but I would encourage everybody to kind of request that presentation at the end so that we could very specifically give you some of that information, right? Something specifically that we're seeing to be a big impact are these topic clusters, right? We're no longer just wanting to focus on one keyword string per page, but almost focusing on using more synonyms, writing more holistically about a practice area. So depth of content underneath a page is being recognized very favorably. And we are seeing that there are many pages on the topic, not just one, that is going to allow us to be successful here. Content silos being a big one. So all of the basics, right? Not just the topic clusters in the way that we write the content, but things like headings, writing it in an easy way for the search engine to crawl, bullet points, numbered lists. So fundamentals, but a few additional AI overview best practices, mainly being the content clusters. Moving into some Gemini AI case studies, one of which you can see here, a real example of that content structure placing you in these Gemini AI overviews. Here's an example of a tool like Ahrefs to look up what phrases are being searched the most in your market, but also telling you how much traffic is being generated on these websites. What we've heard is that a lot of people are seeing their traffic has suffered. And we're seeing that on the back end through some of these tools that we are leveraging as well. And one example of this is the impact that just because there's no traffic doesn't mean that there is not a web page answering this question, right? It's more so the way in which Google is displaying the information. Biggest piece here is, through blogs, right? Blogs that maybe had brought in a ton of traffic in the past may not be bringing in as much traffic these days because people are able to get that answer without going into your site. But also looking at these tools for different opportunities to achieve that visibility. Are there any major questions that haven't really been answered that we can now produce a page of content on to achieve some of that AI overview? And what we found is that after creating that topic on your website as a page, in up to 24 to 48 hours, we're seeing that become picked up in AI overviews because Google is looking for that answer. So sometimes these pages aren't just questions and answers that are going to lead to a conversion or a signed case, but we're doing this in the anticipation that the more AI overviews we can achieve, the more traction, the more visibility and authority we can gain, which should impact our ability to be found for some of those more conversion-focused pages. As far as the depth of content is concerned, what we found earlier is that the topic clusters, the silos of content, making sure that we're building out the depth in content, but the search is essentially summarizing some of that information. So making sure that we are producing well-rounded content that highlights our experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. Like I said, we aren't going to run through all of these in depth just from a timing standpoint, but I would encourage everybody to scan the QR code at the end of this presentation so that we can make sure that you guys get all of that information. Now, another thing that we found with the AI mode is that there is still that very strong correlation to local. So here's just a quick visual of what that AI mode looks like, and also showing that it's pulling the answers that are in the 3-pack in a traditional search. You might note here that initially there's not necessarily a conversion or a call now, but if you click the name of the firm, it opens up to that Google Business Profile to convert, similar to what you'll see on the next slide here, where it pulls up that experience that might be more familiar to folks with that traditional conversion piece. AI mode does allow you to connect with the law firm, and this is telling us that it's even more important than ever to get yourself into that local pack to make sure that you're showing up in the AI mode searches. Just a quick, breakdown, quick summary here of the biggest things that are an overlap in fundamentals, but also the pieces that we really need to optimize for differently. So in the Gemini AIOs, right, what you'll see here is that content optimization, schema markup, results, reviews, testimonials, and the local GBP. These are all major things from a ranking standpoint, but the content optimization that is highlighted in blue, this is one of the biggest differences between Gemini AI overviews and ChatGPT. On the ChatGPT side of things, same thing. You'll see that schema and markup, the results, reviews and testimonials, and the GBP listing information, all very big things that are fundamentally overlapping between the two search platforms as far as visibility is concerned. But the two biggest differences being extra emphasis on those awards and recognitions, and then also third-party sites such as Wikipedia, Reddit, press releases, essentially making sure that we have the right strategy in place off of our site as well, right? Very heavily making sure that, ChatGPT believes us to be an authoritative source, not just because we're telling them, but because they're seeing it from multiple different avenues. Essentially, most important thing to understand here is that if we want to show up everywhere, we have to put time and resources into showing up into these places, right? If you aren't putting those additional resources into showing up in ChatGPT, it's going to get more and more difficult to achieve that visibility. And it is absolutely not a one-trick pony approach. And ChatGPT is the one place where we're able to track that very, very concisely. But you can think of these as being things that apply to all of these different AI search engines that we looked at earlier on. The world of search is diversifying and it's evolving, and we have to continue to allow our strategy to diversify and evolve in order to keep up. Now, before we transition to Viraj here, quick poll for everybody. Anyone who's interested in learning more about optimizing for AI search, please feel free to click the yes button. Everything is still very market dependent, and the extent in which we need to look at these things short term and long term is going to depend very heavily on the saturation in your market, the firms that we're competing against. And so I'm very happy to pull some very specific information to send to anybody who is of interest. And then the second piece being, as we transition to Viraj here, curious to learn a little bit more about any of the firms or folks who are attending that are currently leveraging an AI tool or an outside company to help support their processes, whether it be intake through litigation or something else. And then if you answered yes to any of these things, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what tools you're using and if you're comfortable sharing, some things that you like um, about any of these tools. As I figure out how to unshare my screen here, I'll let Viraj step in.
And Viraj, I just put up the AI and human outsourcing poll. So if we want to give people just a minute here to answer that question as well. So we had two polls and I wanted to give enough time. Um, I'm
Perfect.
seeing I'm seeing right now for the answers, because I think I'm the only one that can actually see in real time, is that 100% have said they're not currently leveraging an AI tool or outside company to help support intake through litigation. So sounds like this will be very helpful for the folks who are answering that way. Um, and so there is not an answer for them to put what they're using there. I'll give that another 5 seconds here.
I do like the real-time Nalini feedback, though. Feels very like who's winning the debate currently kind of reporting.
It's kind of fun to watch. It lights up all, like, it tells me how many people are answering. It has a countdown. It's fun that only I can see it. Okay, so I'm going to end this poll. But yeah, it sounds like there's not folks necessarily on the call who are using a tool or an outsourced company yet. So we'll let you take it away from there.
Great. For what it's worth, you don't need to be. This is somewhat of a newer, well, it's not totally a new concept, but the idea of outsourcing a heavy part of what you do already can feel daunting. And so excited to talk through it. I'll share screen now and walk through. I'll also be conscious of time, but the meeting will keep me honest if I'm ever going a little bit too over. Um, for folks who are on, Finch's goal when we work with any firm is to help you serve more clients with less overhead. And what we have been is a white glove pre-litigation team for growing PI firms. So supporting folks like Pond Lehocky, Phillips Law Group, Bader, Michigan Auto Law, and a bunch of other folks across the country. Uh, where we really come in is for firms that are growing enough that they would otherwise be hiring a kind of unprecedented number of staff or case managers, intake specialists, demand writers, paralegals to help them with that work. And if that comes at the moment where you're otherwise turning cases away, say that you partner with Will and take all of his advice, and then at some point you have enough cases coming through the door that you're kind of at a how will I actually staff against these moment, that's where we've come in and assisted firms. And so to give you some examples of where folks have found this useful, um, Michigan Auto Law has used us over the last year, and in 2025 actually had the most $1 million settlements statewide as a firm that was not otherwise the largest by volume in years prior. And a small part of that was Finch case managers partnering with pods of attorneys and case staff there to help them handle 2 to 3x the clients they otherwise would have been able to. And it allowed a lot of their internal team to focus more on the litigation required to get to those $1 million settlements while we handled a lot of the volume work for them. Pond Lehocky, which is the number one workers' comp and SSDI firm in the country, has started to expand this year their practice to personal injury as well. And so House was single. We're pre-lit teams. They're helping that firm scale what is otherwise a very strong operational playbook to help clients with BI claims across the country, which expands both revenue, but also helps them serve more clients and more use cases, and therefore expands the opportunity they have for organic referrals and volume coming in as well. And firm like George Sink, largest single plaintiff firm in South Carolina, has expanded operations to new states without offices or staff in those states. And so our pre-lit team has helped that firm serve clients in Mississippi without needing to add to their overhead. Bringing those up as a couple of examples, but maybe I'll do a little bit of a step back to where Finch came from and why we started it. If you haven't previously thought there's a bunch of different options other than hiring staff to be able to work these cases, very reasonable. I think our deep dive on legal operations about a year and a half, 2 years ago, was that legal operators in most PI firms are spending half of their time or more on admin work. And that could be things like data entry, it can be gathering evidence, it can be following up on medical records, lien notices, lien balances, police reports, employment records, et cetera. And that is all work that in today's era, there's an immense amount of leverage AI can help with. I think firms haven't jumped to, and I think smart and thoughtful firms haven't jumped to, let me replace all of this with AI for a couple of reasons. One, AI isn't perfect. We all have like probably used it in our personal lives and see its limitations. And two, your clients probably are at different levels of technical, both aptitude, awareness, and excitement. And we today are seeing worse outcomes from most uses of using AI to communicate with your clients in a certain way. And so, as a little bit of the how Finch has found a pre-lit process that has been scalable, we've leveraged AI to do a lot of the busy work or admin work in this flow of pre-lit from intake through demand, while case staff and all of our case staff are US based with 10 plus years of experience, bilingual, are much more dedicated to clients and their care. And so you'll see this split where intake, we're staffing 24/7 bilingual paralegals to qualify and sign leads. This is always human and never automated because we've seen the strongest value for signing those leads and make sure you build trust very early with a client here. And all in treatment, all of our check-ins with clients are going to be very manual and thoughtful and empathetic. We're going to use AI mostly in both of these cases to help with data entry and recording and things like prompting us to make sure we ask the right questions in treatment check-ins. Whereas we'll leverage AI first tools when it comes to things like claims, medical records, lien notices, police reports, and demand letter writing. I think probably most folks are familiar with some of the tools that exist for demand letter writing or document prep. So I'll focus most of some of this conversation on instances you might not have thought of using AI for. We encountered a lot of case managers who spend a healthy amount of time on the phone, on hold, or with folks in insurance companies to open claims or to follow up for acknowledgement. And a lot of that work is that we now take voice AI as the first stab of 80 to 90% of the time opening claims and then doing all of that follow up for acknowledgement or policy limits. On the medical record and lien notices side, along with police reports, we use browser agents as much as possible to take work that is otherwise done in portals, such as Datavant, Sierra, SciOx, or MRO, et cetera, chart swap portals where you would otherwise request and retrieve medical records, and we'll do that in an automated way with browser agents. Police reports, same thing from BuyCrash, CrashDocs, Chris. And then we'll use voice AI to do a lot of the follow-up that you would otherwise be asking your CMs to do with police departments or providers directly for anything that's taking longer than it should to come in. And something I'll note here is the way we've struck this balance is keeping the client experience in mind. Brett Sachs is an amazing attorney we work with out of California, whose quote here of treating every case like $1 million case, not from a monetary standpoint, but from a service standpoint, has resonated with us. And our goal isn't to help you scale purely numerically the ability to serve more cases. It is to take what is we would consider an exceptional client experience, what we consider exceptional operations on moving cases forward and getting great outcomes, and scale that to the point where it's driving real organic growth, not just for the moment in time, but for years to come. And the way we do that is with an excellent team. So in addition to the AI and the agents there doing a lot of the busy work, the people programming and monitoring and doing QA and assembling the infrastructure are folks like Cole, who previously led a team of 75 plus case staff at Morgan & Morgan, and at Finch implements pre-litigation playbooks that put as much of that admin work on autopilot. Or Michelle, who's been a paralegal in PI with over 14 years of experience at both plaintiff and defense firms, is bilingual, super trusted advocate, talking to your clients, helping them manage careful care decisions. Mo is the lead case manager who spent years optimizing PI firm operations, previously as the case manager of Brandon J. Broderick, more recently in a strategy and operations role at Torticity, and now here helping navigate both care protocols, treatment, and demand writing. And most recently, we brought on Blair Warner, who's the chief strategy officer at Morgan & Morgan, who's come in an interim CSO role here after a decade of operating at McKinsey & Company as well. And so she has been a more strategic layer on top of a lot of this, advising on KPIs, both short-term and long-term, and helping advise firms on growth and expansion in the age of AI and private equity. We found is both a complement to very large firms that are looking to scale their practice, but also a lot of smaller firms that might not have access to this kind of talent on day one of operating, with giving you this kind of PI team or fractional PI team in a kind of white glove or in a box model to run cases. A little more on just how this is how we operate, but I think is more my advice as you think about any vendors in this space from the AI side or services side is AI has gotten to the point where it should help a lot of other tools and services integrate with how you work today, as opposed to forcing you to change your model. And so, as an example, what we've done is when we partner with a firm, we act as an extension of that firm. So we will send emails out as case managers from an email address from your firm with your domain. We will push updates into your case management system. So there's not an additional dashboard or tool to use to track those cases. And we work with you directly in Slack or Teams or wherever you communicate today. The outcome being there's not the same setup or adoption curve required. I think one of the things we've seen that can be a barrier to AI adoption at a lot of firms is a tool or service demos really, really well to me as the business owner, or the firm owner, but when I'm trying to work with my staff on adopting that at scale, there is a curve to adoption. And there's folks who might have been doing this job in a particular way for 10, 20, 30 years, where using and learning a new tool, especially one that is automating things that previously weren't automatable, can be too steep of a learning curve for you to see the value in it. And so we've defaulted to integrating with practice management and email, so you are not having to train on a brand new dashboard and therefore incur the learning curve with other tools and tech. We'll strive to keep you updated proactively. So firms that are using us are all these case updates are maintained in their CMS, but typically are getting an initial case report on day one, early records by day 14, and then treatment updates throughout a case, followed by a demand package at a demand readiness milestone or MMI. And I will walk through in this, like maybe what an example pre-litigation playbook looks like, but largely this is something that we have a default take on of how to move cases in a thoughtful, scalable way, with the eye towards maximizing client experience, maximizing outcomes, reducing time on desk. But it's one that we do typically partner with firms in a very tailored capacity to adapt to how they operate today. So where firms have existing SOPs, if you have a COO on board who has like crafted things in a certain way, we will take all the things that you've already created, templates, SOPs and guides, timelines, sample demands, and we will tailor that playbook to that. But to share a glimpse of what that might look like, so the Finch pre-litigation playbook that we share with firms is kind of our default out-of-box model. Uh, has an overview to pre-lit where we look at the full life cycle from intake and onboarding through case setup, through care management, through demand prep and handoff, and what Finch's role versus the firm's role is. Largely, our role becomes executional and administrative, where the firm's role is defining criteria, providing guidance on cases, advising on care direction, and then revising and approving the demand. Things like intake, you're going to see a playbook around bilingual intake, around a 99% answer rate, around outbounding within 5 minutes, around making qualification decisions in real time for qualified leads and signing those retainers on the call to maximize the value of all the thoughtful marketing you're doing and ensuring that no lead goes unanswered or unsigned when you're in a position to help them. After that, we'll schedule a welcome call and conduct it within a business day with clients. On that call, we're going to walk through all the details of the case. We need to go do things like claims, set up liens, request initial police reports and medical records, and we'll be requesting documents from them, such as driver's licenses, health insurance cards, deck pages, accident photos. By the way, happy to share this with anyone after. This is the playbook we run internally. It is one that you could run yourself. Like technology is an input to make some of this true, but you could very much craft a version of this yourself that you run with your existing team. So if you don't have one already and would find this a useful reference point, happy to share it. Case setup is where we're going to be establishing factual and administrative foundation of each matter. And so in that vein, we're going to start with claims and insurance coordination. And so within a business day, have claims opened and LOR sent, and be following up rigorously every 3 days for both adjuster confirmation and to confirm policy details. Early liability and fact development starts the same day. So identifying source of the report, requesting the police or incident report, following up every 3 days, and you should target having those and largely do 90% of the time, have those reports within 14 days. Initial medical records get retrieved within about 30 days with, again, thoughtful, quick requesting, thoughtful follow-up every 3 days, and then those expenses get logged. Lien notices are prepared and sent, tort claim notices, if applicable, and those follow-ups happen as well. During treatment is really where the value of a case gets realized and where your client maybe has the most questions about what to do and is going to be checking in with you if you don't proactively check out with them. And so we'll conduct regular outreach to both providers and clients, usually in that order. So we'll stay on top of treatment that's happening at a provider level so that every 2 weeks we have a good assessment of what's going on, know if there's a chance of gaps in care or non-compliance, and then are checking in with clients to walk through those as well. Ongoing medical record and bill collection throughout, again, targeting within 30 days for any of those. So we're not left with a state where at the end of treatment, we're still requesting a bunch of medical records and bills, and that's preventing the case from moving forward. Throughout treatment, it's very important, as most folks know who run firms today, to stay wary of, in addition to the idea of under treatment, if someone is neglecting care, also to help guide them on how to think about coverage and comparing that to the treatment they're receiving. There's a risk of exhaustion on policies depending on what those limits are and how much care someone's receiving. And so ensuring that they understand the details and trade-offs there and make a thoughtful decision of when to write a demand and move things forward on a case versus continue treating is something we would do in coordination with them and you as the attorney. And coordinate PIP and MedPay as well. The outcome of that full case will be a demand, at least for pre-lit. And so when we reach a demand readiness milestone, AI is helping us identify when those moments are and then flag them to you. During that, so the firm will get notified for review. We would start assembling a demand package, which usually turns around within 3 business days, and then revisions happen within 1 business day. As it's finalized, it's sent out the door, and then we do post and follow up and confirm delivery as well. And post that moment, we don't navigate too far into helping firms through things that borderline unlicensed practice of law. And so when it comes to negotiation or resolution or disbursements, that's back on an attorney's plate, and but can thoughtfully make either close out pre-litigation or hand off to a litigation team as needed. So what I'll just come back to is the takeaway that we found services like Finch can help with is helping you serve more clients with less overhead, especially as marketing that you're investing in starts to kick in and you're at a point where capacity becomes your constraint. So helping firms expand operations without worrying about capacity, move cases faster with higher outcomes, and save up to 40% more on traditional staffing by leveraging this hybrid of AI and dedicated case managers. So I'll pause there. I'll just say, if you're curious to learn more, please visit prelit.com. Happy to share more there. And I don't know if we have another poll, but I'll hand back to Will and Nalini for any questions and answers we want
We
to handle.
we do just one more for
Fun.
everybody. And I think this one is just one question here. And then we're gonna kind of roll into, if you want to share back your screen though, we'll roll
Sure.
into a Q&A, and then I want to make sure that folks have the contact information for both of you as well as the QR code to download the presentation. So if you'll go to the next slide, we can leave that up during the Q&A. This is where I would invite folks to raise your hand, press that button if you have questions that you would like to have our panelists answers. And then I have a couple of questions here that were sent to us pre-registration that we can ask them as well. We've got about 9 more minutes here, and I'll keep an eye open if folks are raising their hand, launching that poll now as well. So this is just a last question about if folks are interested in, oh, very quickly, we got some yeses. Learning more about how to streamline those operations. That was a really cool workflow that you took folks through. I think there's also a lot of value in, like you said, kind of building it yourself because every firm does things a little bit differently. Okay. All right, I'll throw some questions out to you guys as well here while we're waiting for the poll to get answered. Will, you spoke a little bit earlier about lawyer profiles and awards and how those kind of help both organically but also for this new world of AI search. What's your advice for which of those might be worth paying for or investing in?
That's a really good question. That's definitely one of the most commonly asked questions that we get. I'm sure that everybody who's listening here gets 10,000 emails per day about all of these different awards and recognitions. I think the first thing that's important to note there is that every situation is different. right? And the value behind all of these awards is something that is different. Some of them have that paid option, some of them have that free option. A good place to start could be to run a search for any of these keywords that you're really interested in ranking well for or in being visible through AI search in, and identify if there are any lawyer profile sites that are ranking very high in the organic search results on Google. That's usually a pretty strong indication in the level of importance that may exist in any of these different searches, and then understand to what extent do you have resources to potentially invest here, and is this the place that's going to allow you to move the needle most significantly? So definitely an example of something that's difficult to summarize entirely. I would say that's a great place to start. And one step further, definitely reach out to any agency that you're working with and get some of their input, because it is very situationally dependent.
Awesome, thank you. And then, Viraj, I have one for you. A lot of folks are investing in fractional COOs or have a real COO within their staff, who are tackling a couple of the items that you've mentioned, pulling their tech stack together, that kind of thing. If someone has a COO, is that something that that person should be handling all of this, or does it work well with tools and outsourced resources? What are your thoughts on that?
It only goes better. I'll say is like if folks have already spent a lot of time thinking about the way they would like to run their firm and what operations look like and how cases, for example, get triaged off of intake and which ones would make sense to outsource versus keep in-house. We've generally found it a lot easier to collaborate and find the right like path there. If not, we still work great with our kind of like out of box model that we've generally seen get better results than what firms are doing in the past. And then we tend to iterate in person live, but especially over the first 30 days. But um, I will say that like the usually for firms that have hired a COO or fractional COO, you have made some internal decision that is, hey, there's parts to operating a law firm that I really wish I had help with versus things that I want to go spend my time on. I might focus more on brand, or I might focus most on litigation or clients, but ops is something I need help with. And generally, those COOs are also looking for what kind of tools can I onboard because they can't solve it all themselves. And so, if you're in that mindset, I actually think it's generally a very good fit for at least a conversation with Finch. And worst case, we're sharing our playbook and resources that help that person do a lot better too.
Awesome. And then in terms of along those lines, there was another question here. Kind of a what does the makeup of a firm look like that's a good fit for outsourcing this type of thing or for Finch? Like what is the size of the firm? What are they focusing on? What does their employee base look like?
Yeah, I'll answer it in a couple of different ways. So I'll say one that sounds generic and whatever, but I'll share one that I think is a more useful insight too. So I think generically we found fit with a lot of different kinds of firms, and if I'm trying to isolate the thread, it is growing. Like largely, if you are growing, there's parts to that growth that are exciting, and there's parts to that growth that are daunting or energy draining. Often we hear about um, figuring out staffing and HR and office space and a lot of the things that come with just kind of the much more manual staffing model end up being those moments that are draining. And so any high growth firm that has looked like a lot of, for example, solo firms that are experiencing growth for the first time, or smaller firms that are experiencing like very large scale growth for the first time. It's also looked like very large firms that are starting to think about state expansion or practice area expansion or um, kind of leaps and bounds of marketing expansion. The To give it a more direct answer on like firms that might not be an excellent fit, I do think if you're a firm that has thought through which parts of running a firm give you a lot of energy, and if one of those things is solving operations and onboarding tech, then I'd actually be more excited to just share what we've learned with you and spar on notes. But you probably this is something that you're investing in building in house, is like bringing some of these tools like voice AI and browser agents in house and teaching your staff to use them and building that playbook on how. Versus if you're a firm that's more in the camp of I've made the decision, my secret sauce, so to speak, is going to be the way I brand and market myself, or my secret sauce is going to be the way that I litigate cases, then we would typically be a much better fit there.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm gonna toss one last one to Will here along those lines. I know with SEO companies, marketing companies, a lot of times people are like, oh, I have a CMO, so I don't need an agency. Or there's people who are like, I just hired a CMO, so I'm ready for an agency. So what is your take on your experience working with CMOs? How does that help or hurt a relationship with an SEO agency?
Yeah, I love when we're able to work with CMOs on the firm side of things. It absolutely allows our team to get better data, to have more strategic conversations on a recurring basis. What we've found is that having somebody within the firm internally that's really able to focus on marketing and collaborate with us from a strategic standpoint is something that's very impactful. It's another one of those things similar to Viraj's point where ultimately time is oftentimes a constraint when it comes to these things. And so, making sure that we have that point of contact on the firm's side of things that is able to have these high level conversations, these, strategic meetings with our team is absolutely a win-win.
Excellent. All right. Well, we are perfectly on time here. Raj, you didn't go over well. We had our time was perfect there. I will allow you guys any last tips for folks that you would want, any tidbit that you kept there, and then we can close it up.
Will, your tidbit, last tip?
I mean, my tidbit is, a lot of the things that we discuss on, ranking through search can seem daunting, but I do think that there's a lot that firms can do internally, given the information. I think that people discredit, what uh, amount you can move the needle just by making an effort internally. And so that's also something I'm happy to chat about. If it's just something you're passionate about and you're looking for a little bit of information to get better, whether it's with an agency or without an agency, absolutely feel free to reach out.
I don't know if I have any other like last piece of it. I'll just say that we have a number of customers that are BluShark customers and those that have taken a like long-term mindset to growth as opposed to like the pure let me invest for like week to 2 weeks into lead gen service. And the sustainable growth they see over the next like year or so is palpable and have been a great fit for us when it comes time to staffing against those. So remain huge fans of you all as a blue animal logo slash
And vice
namesake.
and vice versa. Vice
Yeah.
versa.
Appreciate it. Yes, we have enjoyed working with the clients that are investing on both sides, right? On the marketing and then making sure that they're doing good things with those leads once they come in and squeezing everything out of it on the operations side. Well, Viraj and Will, thank you guys so much for your time today. We'll close this up and then we will be sending out the recording to everyone who registered. Thanks, guys.
Godspeed.
I don't know.
Cheers. Thanks, y'all.